Hello everybody, welcome to the Red Bull Ring, the penultimate weekend of DTM 2025. What a beautiful setting we've got for this race weekend. Although the weather is a little bit unpredictable. At the moment, we've got heavy rain here at the circuit. It's a very highly elevated track. We're up in the mountains. That has thin air. It also has low cloud. And there you can see the consequences of that sometimes is that when the rain comes, it really does come down. So we've had a pretty massive downpour for the last 15 or 20 minutes. It's going to be a wet track for the first free practice session of the weekend. 2 free practice sessions to come today. And then as usual, tomorrow we go qualifying in the morning to set the grid for race one in the afternoon. And then we do it all again on Sunday. 4 races to go then in what's been an absolutely engaging championship season so far, which was already wide open and got blown completely wide open with the set of results that we had last time out at a hugely dramatic weekend at the Sachsenring. And now we're getting into crunch time in terms of the championship, but there are many contenders for this title, and it'll all probably switch on its head again when we leave the Red Bull Ring and head to Hockenheim in 2 weeks' time. But that is the driver that leads the standings, as he's done all season long, pretty much, apart from a couple of Saturdays where he's slipped back to second place. Lucas Auer has had his nose in front all the way. Super consistent performance. He's now the only driver in the field that scored points in every single race of the championship this year. And Lugi, a former runner-up in the championship, of course, here on his home circuit, the Austrian driver. Jack Aitken, his closest rival, had a big chance to walk away from the Sachsenring with a good points advantage, but Thomas Preining came together with him in race 2, and Jack could only salvage, after being stuck in the gravel trap, a 15th place finish and a single point. So he's just 2 points behind. And the star of the show was that man at the Sachsenring, Aitken Nguyen, now with 4 race wins this year. All 4 of his career race wins coming in the 2025 season. He's won more races than anybody else this year, and he's rocketed up to be within just 6 points of the championship lead. He's tied with Jordan Pepper. They're on 145 each. Thomas Preining, also on his home circuit, a previous winner here at the Red Bull Ring, is 5th on 136 points. Maro Engel, he's only 20 points back. René Rast, who you look at there in the mix as well. And the Red Bull's ring is normally very good for the BMWs, or at least in the dry weather it is. And René, with of the current field of drivers, the most wins around this track in the DTM, with 5 wins, including 1 victory here last year. But they need to try and improve the performances on a Saturday compared to Sunday. The bulk of René Rast's points this season coming on Sundays rather than on Saturdays. But we'll see if that changes here at the Red Bull Ring. But we're also going to see what the weather does. It's definitely wet at the moment. Whether it will be wet over Saturday and Sunday is questionable. There's definitely a chance of some showers, but I think it does look, at the moment at least, a little bit brighter for us when we get to the race days. That said, as I said, we're in the mountains and the weather can be volatile and changeable. So this is the penultimate weekend of the season. 4 races to go, 112 points still up for grabs. Technically, we have still got, or mathematically, we've still got 17 drivers that could win the championship, although it's pretty thin odds for those lower down that order. But when we leave the Red Bull Ring, there'll only be 56 championship points still available. So that's the target. You've got to be within 56 to go into that final weekend, mathematically in with a chance of the championship. There's a driver that loves wet weather racing, loves the wet. Won in the wet a couple of years ago from 14th on the grid at the Nürburgring, Max Powell in the Lamborghini. So we've got 45 seconds to go until this longer free practice session, the 55-minute session, gets underway. I'm in the commentary box overlooking a very wet start-finish line, and we're almost directly opposite the car. You can see there to the left of that picture, Maurice Scuring in the bright orange Porsche, and see that not too many cars from our vantage point have actually nosed out of the garage yet, so it might be a fairly quiet start to the session. But we're here to talk you through whatever happens across the course of the weekend, and there'll be plenty of talking points, no doubt. So thanks for joining us. My name's Chris Hartley, and as ever, alongside me in the commentary box, it's good morning to Brian Oliver.
Morning, Chris. Morning, everybody. We've all been looking forward to this one. It's always an absolute highlight of the season coming to the Red Bull Ring. Always provides great racing. That climb up to turn 3, the steep hill, always the scene of lots of drama. Just plenty of overtaking opportunities around here. Often throws up unusual results. Good to see some cars going out for this, the first free practice session. as you already mentioned. The weather we're expecting to improve, certainly tomorrow. I was just looking at the forecast, and potentially some showers for Sunday morning, which could be significant for quali. So I think it's important that the teams are going out, getting the cars out on track, getting the wet weather set up and the data as well, because there may well be rain later on in the weekend. But whichever way, always good to be here. Great to see cars back on track. Can't believe we're getting to the business end of the season already, but still so much to talk about, so much to play for.
Yeah, so far this year, 6 different race winners. Aitken going with the most victories, 4 as I said, and then we've had 2 each for Rennie Rast, Lucas Sauer, Jack Aitken. Lucas Sauer, the championship leader, both his race wins coming in the first 2 weekends of the season, but that consistency ever since has kept him at the top of the championship table. And we had a win apiece for Jordan Pepper and Thomas Priding. 7 different pole sitters this year, 14 different drivers on the podium, which shows you how open it's been. And in terms of the brands, Porsche have the most wins this season, with 5, 1 for Priding and 4, as I said, for Guin. Pole positions split this year between Mercedes, Ferrari and Lamborghini, have had 3 each, BMW 2, McLaren with Ben Durr getting 1, and as I said, Lucas Sauer, now the only driver on the whole grid that's scored points in every single race of the season. And if the weather's like this, Brian, across the course of the weekend, or it's volatile, or we get showers, it's going to be one of those weekends you just need to get through, score points, get through it safely, and stay in the championship hunt when we get to Hockenheim.
Yes, certainly for those that are in the championship hunt, a non-finish here would be pretty catastrophic. So the drivers certainly in the top 5 of the championship need to finish the race. That is critical. Get it in the points and bring it home. Not necessarily wins, but certainly getting consistent point scores. So there are a lot of drivers out there who mathematically, as you already said, are in the championship hunt, but realistically are not, and maybe gunning for glory. And of course, at this high altitude, we're at well over 600 meters up. Different dynamics, different cars. The turbocharged cars certainly with something one would think of an advantage this high up.
Yeah, certainly that's the theory. The turbo-engined cars, which are the Ferraris, the BMWs, the McLarens and the Aston Martins, able to breathe a bit better at higher altitude. Of course, this all goes out of the window when it's wet like it is now, but we are going to get, I'm pretty sure, some dry running this weekend. So the theory is they have the advantage, and that's certainly been proven. Well, in terms of BMW performances here over the years, that's been the case. Ferraris have had some success, although not more recently around here. But they should have a slight advantage. Although, Brian, the theory is that this year that advantage will be less because we're running a new synthetic fuel for 2025.
Yes, well, really good to have the synthetic fuel along with the sustainable tyres as well, but that's kind of changed the dynamic of the racing as well. There's less fuel efficiency with the synthetic fuel, which is why we have slightly shorter races in 2025. But how does that affect the turbocharged versus the natural aspirated?
Yeah, theory is it minimises that gap, it brings that gap down. It's the engines in the normally aspirated engine cars are able to breathe a little bit better, supposedly, with this synthetic fuel. It's 100% synthetic fuel as well. So that's the theory. We won't really know if that's the case until we get some dry running around the track, because it kind of all goes out of the window in the wet. But that's the theory. And the other great thing about the synthetic fuel is that the emissions from it are much, much less. Thought to be reduced by about 75%. So it's great to see the DTM being environmentally aware and try to deal with sustainability as well as it can, because it's a big talking point, of course, these days. And the tyres, you just said, that's something else that they're trying to be sustainable in terms of where the rubber from the tyres is coming from.
Yes, they are. It's natural rubber components that are certified by the Forest Stewardship Council, with plantations that benefit the people who live and work there. And also, in theory, there's less wear on these tyres as well, so they're a lot more sustainable. And it's really good to see the ADAC pushing forwards with a lot of environmental issues and sustainability, and that's certainly been their mantra for a few years, even down to finer details like no plastic water bottles in the paddock. They've looked across the board at how can we make this more sustainable, more efficient. and that is really good to see. I'm here with my metal water bottle.
Good boy.
Yes.
BWT, yeah, they do a great job, don't they? It's interesting to look at the driver facing onboard camera, Lucas Auer. That expression of concentration is magnified in the wet, isn't it? He's absolutely eyes wide, he's barely blinking. Like, the concentration required here, because a tiny mistake, tiny bit late on the brakes, a tiny bit aggressive on the accelerator, and he'd be off of the barriers.
Yes, and you really can't afford that, because even in free practice, if you stack it, it's putting you on the back foot for the rest of the weekend. So this is really important stuff. It's set up, and as I mentioned earlier, we may well have some wet running. We believe that Friday is the wettest of the 3 days, but we may well have wet running, especially on Sunday. So important setup work, important to find out where the limits are on the car. At the start I said the top 5 can't afford a non-finish. Actually, I meant to say the top 9, because I think from 9th certainly downwards, or upwards, if you will, they are the drivers who are very much in championship contention. Those top 9 need to finish every race, need to be in the points. And Lucas Auer especially, he's leading the way, but only by 2 points. And chucking it in the gravel, even in free practice, could put him on the back foot.
What it also brings into play, I suppose more than ever, is the points you can get in qualifying. 3 for pole, 2 for second, 1 for third. You get 6 points. Locking up straight on there is Lucas Auer, and so easy to do. so easy to do. You also got a nice painted surface on the runoff area, which is super slippery, but he got it just about gathered up. That's so easy to do that. So those 6 points potentially that you could pick up from qualifying with a couple of poles over a weekend, they all are going to add up massively when you look at the points that have been scored by the top drivers in qualifying. They scored 10 or 12 or 13 points over the course of the season, or maybe more, with good qualifying performances. That very well could be the difference between winning it and maybe 3rd or 4th in the championship.
Yeah, it's funny to think, isn't it, that Lucas Auer leads the points. After quali tomorrow, he could be not the points leader. So close it is, and we could have not even turned a lap in racing, and that's amazing. And it's so good that we have those qualifying points, because it really adds a whole new dynamic to things as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, 13 points scored each for Jack Aitken and Jordan Pepper in qualifying alone so far this year. So they've been the biggest point scorers in terms of what they've achieved on Saturdays, and 13 points is equivalent to basically a free 4th place finish in a race. So, and there's more to come potentially from those two. Gilles Magnus, quickest at the moment in the wet with a 1 minute 39.8. I can't give you a bit of comparison here, because free practice 1, free practice 2, Friday last year, guess what, they were wet as well. And qualifying 1, Saturday last year, was wet. So free practice 1, 12 months ago, Lucas Auer was quickest with a 1:38.051. So we're nowhere down to those times. And of course, there are different degrees of wet. This is pretty wet though. So not going as quickly as they were in the wet here last year. It was sort of semi-wet in free practice too, 1:29.7. Lucas Stotz was quickest in the Mercedes, and Arjun Miney was quickest and got his first ever pole position in the wet on Saturday during qualifying with a 1:30.128. So it kind of started really wet last year in free practice 1, then dried out, was kind of more damp really for free practice 2 and qualifying. But the fact that they're still more than a second slower than the very wet times from last year shows you just how tricky it is out there at the moment. Interesting, when it was wet, Mercedes fastest in free practice 1 last year, Mercedes fastest in free practice 2, and a Mercedes Arjun Miney on pole position when it was wet last year. They wouldn't mind a bit of wet weather this weekend, Brian, because the other thing about this circuit is that it's got a couple of very long straights. Here's Arjun Miney.
Is it all right? Not too bad.
Not too bad.
How's the aquaplaning? Not too very much under control. I think I would be a little bit more vociferous about it if I was on the radio, but it's all part of dealing with a lot of the drivers love the wet weather conditions, but it is on a knife edge out there. But yeah, it's a very high speed circuit in terms of a couple of long straights, a couple of high top speeds, and the Mercedes notably hasn't got that good a top speed compared to some of the other cars, so that if it is dry in the races, they might struggle a bit. They would definitely want a bit of wet weather here.
Yes, and the BOP. I don't know if you mentioned the BOP already. Certainly doesn't appear to favour the Mercedes too much at this weekend. But yes, those long straights. I would just say in these conditions, turn 2, which is taken flat out, it is but a kink in the track, and then you go up the hill towards turn 3. The water tends to flow across turn 2. You get a little stream running across the track there, and that is a real risky point to aquaplane as the Aston Martin of Gilles Magnus coming out wide. Those bollards, well, if they are still there at the end of tomorrow, I'll be very surprised indeed. Track limits always an issue here as well.
Is that another hat you're going to eat?
Yet another hat. I am full of hats this year. But keeping the track limits is going to be, in fact, as I said, track limits. Yeah. Turn 1, cars 64, 19 and 63. So it's Fabio Scherer, Luca Exler and 63 Jordan Pepper, who have all had track limit warnings at turn 1. I would say that just keeping it on the tarmac at all in these conditions, they deserve a medal, not a track limit warning. As we ride on board, sorry, change the subject, Ben Durr, who was last weekend in Austria an absolute superstar, featured in the GT Masters and won on debut, took McLaren's first ever win in GT Masters along with Guillaume de Oliveira in the car that this Timo Glock started the season with, and was so strong at the Salzburg Ring last weekend. I don't know if I said Saxon Ring, Salzburg Ring, which is about 200 kilometres away from here. Spectacular circuit, and congratulations to Ben Durr, first place and a second place on debut in GT Masters. Congratulations to him.
Hopefully put a smile back on his face and the team's face after, of course, at the Saxon Ring. We walked away from the race and thought, fantastic, he's got his first ever podium in the DTM, a second place finish, and then was later, a couple of hours later, in fact, excluded from the results because they had put unsanctioned tyres on the car just on the way to the grid and then changed the tyres from slicks to slicks on the grid, which is not allowed. So he wasn't using any illegal tyres or unmarked tyres or unsanctioned tyres actually in the race, but he had on the way to the grid, and massively disappointing because of that brilliant performance from the team as well. A couple of great pit stops they gave Ben Durr, and he drove brilliantly as well, and to have that taken away, hugely disappointing, but of course does show the great potential that he and the team have had. But as I say, getting that couple of wins at the Salzburg Ring in the GT Masters Championship, at least giving them something to smile about, hopefully more to smile about in the remaining races of the weekend. Ben has been an absolute star performer this year in the way that he's evolved as a racing driver and the team since we were here 12 months ago. It's been a hugely steep curve and a very positive curve as well. So he, director, noticing that he's going to be one to watch this weekend, has put an onboard camera on him. Great to watch him going around the lap here. Going back to the fact that if you've got a car that's good with top end speed, like the BMWs, like the Aston Martins, like the Ford Mustangs in the dry around here, you should be onto a winner. So the Mustangs and the Aston Martins could be dark horses here. We got an Aston Martin quickest, Gilles Magnus. The Mercedes of Lucas Harris second, only a tenth or so behind. Nicky Thiem in the Lamborghini for Abt has gone third quickest. Thomas Preining has just gone up to fourth in the Porsche. Fifth is the Audi of Ricardo Fella. So there you go. The top 5, all different brands at the moment. Jordan Pepper is sixth, Thierry Vermeulen, Aitken and Jules Goudon and Arjun Maini also in the top 10. And Ricardo Fella has just gone through to go quickest in the session with a 138.766, 3 tenths quicker than anybody else, although pushes a bit too wide. And the Lamborghini of Jordan Pepper has also found the escape route. Luckily, this little strip that we've got here is always very useful, isn't it? Because you go beyond the gravel trap, you miss the braking point, you don't have to drive all the way through the gravel trap. You've got this nice little return route, but it is a long way onto the circuit. So this is going to be a replay of him just out braking himself into turn 4. He does go through the gravel trap. It'll be a bit compacted, that gravel in the wet, so he'll be able to get through it easier than in dry conditions, and then knowing that there's that little strip of time out there, finds it, and not too much harm done in the end.
It's really good you've got that escape road, isn't it? When you visit the paddock after this race, there'll be a little pile of gravel where that car was parked up. But yeah, I mean, free practice, it's all about finding the limit, isn't it? It's about seeing how far you can push it. If you're going to make a mistake, then do it in free practice and free 1 and 2, but just keep it out the barrier. And Jordan Pepper has discovered how hard he can push it to turn 4. It's a great overtaking opportunity in turn 4, fairly heavy braking into that corner. And as you say, with the gravel potentially compacted, he was able to keep it going and escape through the little escape road.
Jugun on, 8th in the championship, but still, as he gets a proper slide on, very much in championship contention. A great second place finish for him. He swapped cars at Sachsenring, having started the season in a different car. So it's not a brand new AMG chassis. It's one that's been used before, but not by Jules and not in this championship. And he was much happier with the car. Says, yeah, it just feels just that little bit better. Something not quite right with it, or it wasn't quite fitting me, the other car. And his performance excellent to keep himself in the championship fight with the first podium finish since the opening few weekends of the season. So he's going to be in the mix. This man is absolutely going to be in the mix for the rest of the season. Jack Aitken in the Ferrari. Emil Frey making great strides forward. Podium finish in race 1 at the Sachsenring, but that huge disappointment after that when leading the race, that coming together when Thomas Preining went for a move, they came together and he ended up in the gravel trap.
So we see cars doing the full curving, full line in the second last corner, but not going for the curb on the last corner, just for info. Good improvement in sector 2.
That's interesting, isn't it? So feedback about how and when to use the curbs and how and when not to use the curbs, because famously, when they're painted curbs, they can be ultra slippery, but you also kind of want to let the car run as wide as possible through the last 2 turns so you can get the power on as quickly as possible for this run down the start-finish straight.
Well, Maurice Schuring, an experienced driver around here, but not in DTM, his debut season in the DTM. Of course, he's done many laps around here in Porsche Carrera Cup Germany and in Porsche Mobil 1 Super Cup. So he's doing very well at the moment. So he's up at 10th place, but yes, very wide as Jack Aitken now out of turn 1 moves past him and just looks to the side, make sure he's clear. Jack always looks so chilled, doesn't he?
Yes, he does. Yeah, superb performances from him. A real championship contender here. Despite a hugely disappointing Sunday at the Sachsenring, could have been so much better. He was leading the race. He was certainly on course for a podium. But Nicky Tim now puts the absolute best middle sector of the lap in. So just to gets a big slide on those. He goes wide and on the curbs. Absolute commitment here from Nicky Tim, who's already second quickest at the moment. Might be about to go to the top of the times, getting sideways as he went out of turn 9 into turn 10. Over the line goes quickest by 77 thousandths of a second. So the Lamborghini for Abt working well in the wet conditions, but as is always or often the case, when you put your best lap of the session and you find the limits, you then maybe explore them and go a bit beyond them on the next lap. So he was a bit very deep into the first corner there. But Abt, it's been a struggle for them this year, hasn't it? But of course, it's their first year running the Lamborghini after a quarter of a century running Audis. And the other point is that, unlike Grasser, who've got basically a decade of experience of running the Lamborghinis, they only run the car in this championship. They do some Nürburgring races, but on different tyres. They run the Michelin tyres, whereas you've got Grasser, who know the cars anyway, know the cars from DTM, know the cars with the Pirelli tyres from also racing them in the GT World Challenge. So they're always going to be on the back foot, despite the fact that Abt have got all this experience. They don't have as much experience with this particular car. And when you look at the lap times, they're never that far away. No. But it's so tight out there, especially in qualifying, that I think the last couple of weekends have basically been about 7/10 of a second away from pole position. But that puts them back in 2/3 of the way down the field.
Well, we've seen the whole field covered by a little over a second at some circuits, haven't we? Of course, Abt will finally get the grips of the Lamborghini Huracan by the end of this year, and then next year they might have to start again because it'll be the Temerario that could potentially replace the Huracan. There's not actually official confirmation whether the new Lamborghini, they will have enough ready for DTM for next season. They've said at Lamborghini they want to avoid having both the Temerario and the Huracan alongside each other in the same track, on the same track in the same series. Rene Rast goes a little bit wide.
Welcome to the World Drift Championship.
But it may well be that next year the Abt, if everything goes to plan, will have another new car that they're going to have to discover.
Joy. Yeah, and it'll be a pretty public place to learn the car, wouldn't it? We'll see what happens with that. There won't be enough for them to be used in all the championships, those cars. So as Brian said, it may be that we won't have it in the DTM. It may be that we will, but if we do, it'll be both of them. So we'll see. But The car certainly at the hands of Nicky Tim going very well in the wet conditions. So too the Ferrari in the wet. Jack Aitken is third quickest at the moment. We did see René Rast. René struggling in the wet. So we talked about the BMWs being very well suited to this circuit in terms of they've got the turbo, which at higher altitudes works better than the normally aspirated engines like you've got on the Porsche and the Mercedes, but also it's got very good top-end speed, the BMW, and there are a couple of long straights here. So why is he all the way down the order then at the moment? Marco Wittmann's 21st and René Rast is 13th, and the answer is the BMWs do not like the wet weather. René Rast, the great René Rast, a three-time champion, has said it's a real difficult car to drive in wet conditions, so they for one don't want it to rain on race day.
No, and René Rast will be minded of the fact that a couple of weeks ago in testing here he did actually find the barrier. Now it wasn't a driving area, they put it down to a track rod that had broken, or a tie rod, coming out of turn 10, exactly the same spot where Marco Wittmann found the fence in the test session the year before, but it was quite a heavy crash for René Rast, and I don't think it certainly wouldn't affect the confidence of somebody like René Rast, but interesting that the BMW had that issue in testing 2 years running in the same place.
Aitken Nguyen, on his most recent lap, set the absolute best middle sector. There's only Porsche out there at the moment. I can see from the commentary box, Thomas Preining has just left or just leaving the pit lane. Maurice Scuring is still sat opposite us, so Aitken the only Porsche out there. But the overall, the lap didn't move him up the order, so still 6th place. Ben Green in 9th, after picking up his, belatedly, his second podium of the season last time out at the Sachsenring, because Ben Durr was disqualified. He was later moved up from 4th to 3rd place. So Ben on a good run of form at the moment. He said to me at the Sachsenring, we had an issue with my car for the first half of the season. That has now been resolved. We can go into details about what it was, but he, a bit like Jules Gounon, much happy with the car that's underneath him for the last couple of rounds, and Ben is really starting to show what he can do now as a driver that's won the DTM trophy, won races in GT Masters, was a star previously in the UK in Ginetta racing. Then it's great to see him now starting to really perform. There are a lot of cars running ragged and wide, not more so than Nicky Tim, who looks like he's rally crossing half the time, but the Viking is just about one of the bravest drivers out there, and he won't be worried about that. He goes through and he's even quicker, 1:38.667. So 22 thousandths quicker than his previous best lap. He's now almost a 10th up on Ricardo Feller, who's doing an excellent job in second. Jack Aitken is about a 10th and a half of a second slower in third. Lucas Harris 4th, but 3.5 tenths down. Gilles Magnus, who's been really impressive this year, 1:39.057. He's just about 4 tenths of a second away from the fastest time. Nguyen is 6th, 4 tenths off as well. Half a second off, but 7th is Thomas Preining. Thierry Vermeulen's in the pits at the moment. He's 8th. Ben Green 9th, and Maro Engel in 10th place.
I think it might have stopped raining. Certainly, it's backed off, if not stopped completely. I can't actually see any rain coming down. There's still a lot of spray out on the track. It'll take a while for it to dry out when it does stop raining, but it certainly is not the conditions that we had at the start of this session. So there may be, towards the end of this session, some dry weather data to be gathered as well. You can see the Maro Engel windscreen wipers are on intermittent rather than constant now as he comes out along the pit straight once again. So good to see everybody out on track bar 6 cars. So a lot of drivers staying out quite a long time, giving us plenty to look at, and some great pictures here at the Red Bull Ring as we're looking down at turn 4. Jordan Pepper once again exploring the outer limits. Well, he didn't get quite as far into the gravel trap this time, keeps it going, is able to rejoin. I think by the end of today he'll know exactly how fast he can approach turn 4.
Yeah, but the track's going to change and evolve. As you said, it's less wet now, and that's backed up by the fact that we've just seen Nicky Tim getting the fastest lap of the session. We've also got a lot of green sector times and green lap times. So when it goes green on our timing screen, that's a personal best. So we've had personal best lap from Lucas Hauer. He's just popped himself up to 3rd quickest. He found about a 10th and a half. Personal best lap from Jules Gounon, who's gone up to 7th. Maro Engel, we've been watching. His most recent lap got him into the top 10. And also Luca Enxler had a personal best lap. And Jack Aitken has just done the absolute best first sector, personal best through the second sector. Quicker than he's been before through that part of the course. Jack now making his way through the final turn, using all of the curbs on the way out of the track, goes over the line, downhill on the way out of that turn 10, goes quickest and by nearly 0.2 of a second. So I think you're absolutely right, Brian, that track is now starting to dry out. There will be a point where if it does stay off the rain, it'll get greasy and damp, and that's no good either really for the wet weather tyres.
No, and it'll be a little while before we're getting into dry tyre territory, if at all, in the next half an hour. But this track does drain quite quickly. You do get a dry line appearing quite quickly once it does stop raining. But you've got, as I mentioned before, that turn 2 where you have the little stream going across, and that can catch you out if you're on slick tyres. So it would be a bit risky going too early onto that as we look at Jack Aitken. Well, he kept it inside the bollards, that's the important bit. The back end skating around, but you can see how hard he's pushing. On board with him here, coming into the penultimate turn 9, under braking, and then that is 9, isn't it? Yes, and then into 10, and he's just all chilled about it though, isn't he?
Every year those bollards get wiped out, don't they?
Yes.
You're a bollard, you don't want to volunteer for that position, that corner. No, you're right, thank you. I'm going to get wiped out. The worrying news for Jack Aitken is that Emil Frey and that Ferrari 296 have not got a great history around this circuit. So for all he's achieved in the last 3 seasons of racing, Jack Aitken's best finish around this track in the DTM is an 8th place. An 8th place finish in 2023, so maybe wet weather would be good for Jack as well, even though that's one of the turbo-powered cars. His teammate, obviously Ben Green hasn't been here in DTM before, his teammate Thierry Vermeulen, his best result is a 9th, so a track where they are not necessarily expecting to go well. Hockenheim has been okay, but he's never really been consistently right up there, so maybe some mixed weather would be good for the British driver. He's certainly fighting the wheel there. Full concentration from Jack. Now, that's the best way to get around this place, isn't it? Not much walking that me and you do. Get on the scooter, right? More wide moments. This time, oh, there it goes. Luca Exler. That's 10 points, isn't it, for every one of those you get?
That's one less hat I'm going to have to eat. So, interesting. Team Landgraf have been reported to the stewards for unsporting behaviour. I know someone's been flicking the V somewhere or what, but that's just popped up on our timing screen. But yes, so first bollard down, won't be the last. We'll see some more of that as the weekend goes on. But yes, less than 28 minutes remaining. Jack Aitken quickest, 1:38.478. It's all getting quite interesting, really. We've got everybody out on track bar 4 cars. Nicky Tim looking very good in that 2nd place, 0.189 back. And Luca Exler clearly pushing hard at the moment. Where is he on it? He's 11th at the moment, so looking to improve on that. He's done personal best in sector 1. So yes, I think the track, lots of greens on the track, so I think the track is getting quicker and quicker. So this could be an improvement from that 11th place. He comes out onto the pit straight. It was last time around a 1:39.243. Is this going to be an improvement this time around? No.
He built it up,
yes.
And he let us down.
Yes.
Luke Ranks' due a good result, isn't he? His best finish of the year, which I found astonishing, really, because he's a hugely talented driver, 2-time winner. His teammates going for the championship. His best finish this year is a 6th place at Zandvoort. Now, that's no comment on Luke Ranks' performances this year. It is a comment on how much bad luck he's had this year, because I think several occasions where he's been hit in the races. I mean, the last time out at the Saxon Ring, he was right up there battling in the top 5, got contact late on in the race, dropped down the order, finished in the points still, but low down in the points. There's been too many days like that for Luke Rexler this year. He's due for the fortune to turn a bit more in his favour, because he's a super quick driver, and the results haven't really reflected that so far this year. Meanwhile, Jack Aitken is on another stormer, absolute best in the 1st sector. Through the 2nd sector, Nicky Tim has still got the best sector 2 time. Now, sector 2, the middle sector, you divide the lap into 3 portions. That's the longest sector, so one you've really got to get right. So that runs from the entrance to turn 3, the hairpin at the top of the hill, all the way down to the entrance to turn 7. And through that sector, Jack Aitken does a 43.5. He's 0.3 of a second that he's losing compared to Nicky Tim's time just through that sector. So although he's got an absolute best in sector 1, he's actually down on the overall time of Nicky Tim throughout the middle part of the lap, and he might not improve his overall time. It depends what this last sector is like. That was very smooth, though, on the way out through turn 10, much smoother than previously. Didn't take too much curb, carries the momentum, heads over the line, but no, it's a good lap, but it's not quite what he did before. 138.6, about a tenth slower than his best.
So still 25 minutes remaining, still most of the cars out on track. Here comes Jordan Pepper and crosses the line. So where was he coming into this? He was up into 11th, so kind of mid-order, 139.193, so about 7 tenths off. Of course, there was always the question of how hard drivers are pushing on the Friday in terms of not showing too much too soon.
Yeah, well, probably a good point. We've been seeing quite a bit of Jordan. A good point to talk about balance of performance and a pretty major change that we've had for the Lamborghinis, Brian.
Yes, I mean, originally we thought we were going to have a ride height adjustment that was going to be significantly more than it turned out to be. The cars had been running at a minimum ride height of 70 mil. And the word on the street was going to be 105 mil coming into this weekend. In fact, it is now 85 mil, the minimum ride height at the front. But the powers that be in the BOP world who are looking at that and trying to make sure these cars are equal, but it's quite a big change. Certainly, I think that Grasser are a little bit grumpy about that as well, because you change the car by 15 mil, that's going to change the whole dynamic, the whole setup, the whole way it acts. So a lot of work to do during these free practice sessions, kind of rediscovering a setup.
So the closer the bottom of a car is to the ground, the better its grip levels through high-speed corners, essentially. It's low down. If you think about something that's tall and vertical, it's topply, it's top-heavy. Anything that's really low down, it's got great balance through a corner. That's why Formula One cars are so low down to the ground. I mean, they get the ground effects as well on Formula One these days. But the lower down, the better. So that's the ride height, is the distance between the bottom of the car and the surface of the road. Now, last year, after winning the championship in 2023, the Porsches of Manthey and Thomas Preining, their ride height, but this was at the start of the season, was raised by just 5 millimetres, half a centimetre. It doesn't sound like anything, does it? But they had all sorts of trouble getting that car competitive for the first few rounds of 2024, didn't they? The Lamborghinis have gone up by 3 times that. They've gone from 70mm to 85. They've gone up by 15mm. So Gottfried Grasser is saying, well, look, all the testing and all the information we've got from the car is kind of out of the window now, because it's going to be a different beast for the rest of the season. But they've also got less airflow to the car. So last year they had a 51mm air restrictor. It's one of the things that you can change on the cars in balanced performance, the amount of airflow for the naturally aspirated engines that's coming in. The more the engine can breathe, the more air that's coming through, the better. But you can restrict that flow of air. Now, I had a 51mm size restrictor last year. This year it's 49mm, so it's a smaller restrictor. So there's less air coming in. And they reckon that 1mm is worth about 0.2 of a second per lap. So 2mm reduction of airflow, 0.4 of a second a lap that they are potentially facing just through the lack of airflow. Then they've got the ride height adjustment, and the car's higher off the ground and less stable. They have been given a little bit less weight, so 10 kilograms lighter than they were in 2024. They reckon that is worth about 1/10 of a second, 10 kilograms. So all in all, without even factoring in the ride height, in dry conditions, that Lamborghini, according to Gottfried Grasser, could be 0.3 of a second a lap slower than it was last year.
Which is a massive amount in DTM. SRO, who look after the BOP, take it from across all series, all the GT3 series. So not only SRO, but DTM, GT Masters, and all. They take the data from all the series when they come up with the BOP. It's just interesting that it should change with 2 rounds remaining in the season, and you can understand Gottfried Grasser being a little bit disgruntled about it, because they've spent a whole season and more getting a setup, getting it right, and then, as you say, you change the ride height and everything changes because the car's so much higher up. As we look at Marco Wittmann having a fairly wild ride out of turn 9 as well. But yeah, and the problem is with a wet session here, they're not really getting the data that they want. They need a dry session to really find out how it's going to shake out, I think, don't they?
Other changes compared to last year, the Mercedes have also got less airflow, but by 1mm. So their air restrictor is 1mm smaller than it was last year. So in theory, that could be 0.2 of a second as well. And they struggle with top speed as well. The BMW's similar in terms of how much boost you've got. So it's not airflow that they change on BOP for the turbo-powered cars and air restrictors. It's the boost on the turbo. So they've got the BMW's got a bit more boost at mid-range revs. It's all done on a rev scale, how many revs you're doing, and they've got a bit more at mid-revs, but at high revs, they've got a bit less. So it's kind of equaled out. And they're 5 kilograms heavier than they were last year, the BMWs. So it's slight tweaks, but nothing too dramatic for the BMWs. Then the Ferraris are 5 kilograms heavier as well, but they would have hoped for a boost improvement, really, I think, given the record isn't great here, the track record in the last few years. The Porsches are 30 kilograms heavier than they were last year. So that's a big step, isn't it? If you're saying 10 kilograms is a tenth of a second a lap, that's also 0.3 of a second a lap potentially they will lose.
It's very significant, isn't it? But this isn't just somebody coming up with an idea and working out on the back of a fag packet. This is, if you look at the formula that they use, I certainly don't understand it. We're issued a bulletin with the kind of breakdown of how they come up with the BOP, and it is really complicated. The flow chart, it's not just, oh, well, we'll just throw a bit of weight and see what happens. It's really, really carefully worked out. Their aim is that every car, a lap time would be within 1/10 of each other. That's the aim of the BOP, and getting it right. When you think of how different these cars are to each other, different capacities, turbocharged, naturally aspirated, front engine, rear engine, getting them as close as they do is phenomenal, and it seems to be a very ever-changing creature that needs to be looked at all the time.
And it's different for different tracks.
Yes, of course.
It can even be adjusted, like we had several adjustments at the Nürburgring throughout the course of the weekend. So, yeah, it's just to equalise things, as Brian said, turbo-powered, normally aspirated cars, different top speeds, different horsepower, just to keep them as equal as possible. You have this sort of equalisation of the cars by either taking power away or adding weight or, all that sort of thing, but it varies. And the end result is it's a very difficult job, and nobody's ever happy apart from the guy that wins the race.
Yes.
It's a difficult one, isn't it, to get absolutely right. Yeah. But I suppose what you could say, like Brian, as you've said a few times, Nürburgring, wasn't it? The whole field in qualifying within a second of each other. So yeah, something right.
But you walk around the paddock and you talk to drivers, not just in DTM, in GT Masters, GT4, and they're always like, oh, BOP's against us this weekend. And you say, unless they win, everybody thinks the BOP's against them.
As ever, I spoke to Jack about this at the last round, Jack Aitken. He's always very measured. He said, look, it's against us one weekend, one race day, but you win sometimes as well. People forget that. He said, sometimes it works in your favour, and sometimes it doesn't. It's all just part of the game. So he was very level and even about it, as Jack always is. He's again set the absolute best first sector time. So he's fine. The first sector takes from the start finish line through turn 1, turn 3, which is kind of turn 2. There's a little kink, as Brian said, up the hill before they hit the brakes again. But that is counted as a corner, that flat out cut turn. So it's only turns 1 and 2 that count. And then that's the first sector. It's only 24 seconds long. Ricardo Feller for the second lap running, improving, but Jack Aitken going even quicker with a personal best in the last sector to add to his absolute best in sector 1. And Jack now fastest by 0.2 of a second with a 1:38.233. Ricardo Feller in second with a 1:38.445. Can we give a bit of appreciation as well to what a fantastic job Ricardo Feller and Land Motorsport in particular, as a team that's new to the DTM, are doing with what's actually a pretty old car this season.
Yeah, we've mentioned this a few times this year already, but it's quite a story. The car that Ricardo Feller won the GT Masters title with back in 2021, the very same car. They dusted it off, dragged it out of a museum when his original drive fell through for this year, and at the last minute, Land Motorsport coming into the DTM, putting an Evo kit on it and proving to be pretty competitive. The car is called Eileen, and he shouts, "Come on, Eileen," every time he crosses the start-finish line, and it's so good to see Ricardo Feller out there, and it's something of a kind of a fairy tale, really. And he got a podium with it at the Nürburgring, and that was really good to see. Yeah, top job. It's the only Audi out there, and really good job done there. As we see the yellow Mamba now coming out across the line, still drivers improving left, right and centre. We mentioned the BOP from a few years ago now. Ben Green will be remembering the 2022 GT Masters where the BMW was really strong here, and he and the GT Masters got back-to-back wins here at the Red Bull Ring, and he'll be remembering that very much because they really were so strong that weekend here. But GT Masters, identical cars to these that you see in the DTM GT3 cars, they're running here this weekend as well. So teams that are running in GT Masters and in the DTM, there's a fair amount of data that can be gathered from that.
Can be useful, can't it? If you've got changeable weather and say you've got drivers out just before your race in the other race, DTM or GT Masters, so you get feedback of how quickly is that track drying, or how wet is it? Do we need wet tyres? Do we need dry tyres? So it can definitely help out. Terry Vermeulen, 6th quickest. That wasn't his greatest, but he's doing a good job at the moment. Maurice Skuring is just at the absolute best middle sector, 43.169. His first sector was a 24.9 though, which is the best part of 0.8 of a second off Jack Aitken's first sector time, but he still could improve quite significantly if he keeps it together through that last couple of corners from where he's at the moment, which is 12th quickest. I don't think he's going to challenge for the front. He doesn't in the end, even though it's personal best, so he stays due to that poor first sector really, 0.7 of a second off the absolute best pace and in 12th position. Manthey are leading the Teams Championship. It's not just a Drivers' Championship to consider when we get into these last couple of weekends of the season. So Schubert won the Teams Championship last year, but Manthey are winning it this year. They are 47 points clear of Winward Racing. Schubert a third, 49 points behind Manthey. And Emil Frey are running in 4th place, 64 points adrift. You count your best 2 cars results from the races. Most of the teams have only got 2 cars, but if you've got 3, like Manthey, you count the best 2 towards the points. The Manufacturers' Championship has been led all the way through the season by Mercedes, but they've never had a massive advantage, and it's still only very slim. In fact, it's slimmer after the excellent results for Aitken at Sachsenring. So only 16 points clear now in the Manufacturers' Championship are Mercedes of Porsche, third of BMW, and they're only two points clear of Ferrari, who are in 4th place. And then the Rookie Championship as well, of which has been a great battle season long really between Maurice Skuring and Ben Durr. Maurice has had 5 rookie wins and Ben has had 4, and there's only 15 points between them. Maurice, of course, with the disqualification for Ben Durr, he looked like he was going to walk away with the advantage potentially at Sachsenring, but he lost the 25 points for winning the rookie segment of the race as well when he got disqualified from 2nd place overall. So it's Maurice Skuring with his nose in front in the Rookie Championship, 15 points clear of Ben Durr. Gilles Magnus 3rd, 59 points adrift. They also scored points for qualifying in the Rookie Championship, so it's the same point system for the races. If, say, you finish 6th in the race but you're the first of the rookies, you get the points for a win in rookie standings, which is 25, 20 for 2nd, 16 for 3rd and so on. But there's also 10 points available for being the fastest rookie in qualifying, then 9 for 2nd, 8 for 3rd and so on. So they're all added up, and you get points taken away if you're a bit naughty and you have a warning, so you get penalty points as well. But very close between those two. Gilles Magnus creeping up after them though, after 2 really good performances at Sachsenring, an 8th and an 11th place finish, and Come To You Racing as well. While they're at the foot of the table in terms of the teams, they're quite quickly catching up to a couple of teams ahead of them, and that'd be a great achievement for Come To You Racing if they can start beating a few of the teams that are established in the championship by the end of the season.
For a debut season in DTM, Come To You have been phenomenal. They've had a few trip-ups along the way, and a lot of it is about just learning the ropes in DTM. A few times they've fallen foul of a few procedural issues and have had points deducted as a result of that, but they have been so impressive this year. They've come into DTM, they've learned performance pit stops. Come To You, a team that we've associated with TCR Racing in the past, as Maurice Skuring's continued to improve in Sector 1, out across the line he comes. But yeah, it's really impressive from Come To You, and also their 2 drivers, Gilles Magnus and Nicolas Barr, really, really good. And it just feels like this year there are no also-rans in the championship. Everybody who's in the DTM this year is really a contender for a podium. There's nobody there who's just making up the numbers. And it's wild right from Ricardo fell out at turn 10. Yeah, really, really impressive from come to you. And the rookie championship, you're looking at that, and it's just some really good quality rookies. And I mean, it feels weird calling Ben Dur a rookie, but I'll tell you what was interesting, watching Ben Dur at GT Masters last weekend, and you just see how much of a step he has taken up. I remember him in GT4 a couple of years ago, and you know, without wishing to be rude, he wasn't a podium challenger in GT4 Germany. Last weekend in GT Masters, he looked like a veteran, and I think a lot of that is just through running in DTM as well, where he has upped his game. Massive steps up the ladder, and he looked so mature and so good and was so strong in GT Masters last weekend.
Yeah, and as we said before, hadn't really got any notable GT3 experience before he came into the DTM, the most competitive of championships last year. And so it's just a case of learning as a team. Just, you know, he said that the brief was bring the car home, you know, try and get as many laps in, as much mileage as you can last year. This year, and they didn't really have any pre-season preparation last year in terms of pre-season testing. This year, they have had pre-season testing. They've got that year under their belt. Timo Glock has come in and brought all the experience that he's got. He's brought some experienced people into the team with him, and they've done a mega job, a really good job. A couple of improvements in the last 60 seconds. One for Gilles Magnus, talking about come to you racing, the Aston Martin. Gilles now up to second place, and Thomas Preining has just popped himself up to fourth position as well. Tommy has been a winner here in recent years. He's had a win, a second and a third here in the last few seasons of racing. No doubt Mom and Dad will be here supporting him as well. His dad Andy, a former motorcycle racer, so in the home circuit, he'll be going for it. He was super frustrated with himself after, in his eyes, making the mistake that ended up costing him the win right at the end of the race. Remember, on Saturday at the Sachsenring, he was leading, but it was a damp, slippy track, and he just went slightly wide coming out of the last turn because it's a big steep hill coming out of the last turn. It killed his acceleration and top speed. Jordan Pepper got alongside, they made contact, and Aitken read it beautifully and stole on the last lap of the race the win, having started the lap in third place. And then Thomas involved in that incident on Sunday then, where halfway through the race, Jack Aitken was leading, he was going with him. They were both miles clear of Aitken, who was in third. And we thought, is he going to wait for the opportunity? He sat behind him for a lot of laps. There's another pit stop coming up. McIntyre great at pit stops. Will he just wait and try and get him in the pits? But he said, Jack made a slight mistake. I saw a gap, I went for it. And of course, two drivers have two different opinions about whose fault that was. But the stewards said it was your fault, Thomas, because they gave him a 3 penalty laps, didn't they? Which, again, dropped him way down the order. Not as far down the order. That was Jack Aitken, who got stuck in the gravel and ended up only recovering 1 point, and that was only because Ben Dur got disqualified after the race.
Yes, and I think Jack just a little bit frustrated. I mean, he'd come into the race at the top of the points briefly, and then with that race, very frustrated by it.
Never heard Jack swear on team radio before,
no.
But he was definitely he was definitely annoyed, and you can absolutely understand why. It was that classic Thomas Preining move as well, which he's used brilliantly so many times in the past. It's a kind of, I think of it, because I'm old school, as a Nigel Mansell move, because my first ever motor race was the 1987 British Grand Prix at Silverstone, where Nigel Mansell had to pit, an extra pit stop, and then came charging back after Nelson Piquet and did that dummy move, if you're old enough to remember it, on the Hanger Straight. He went left, Piquet defended it, then he flicked across to the right, went on the grass and passed him and won the Grand Prix. And that's what Thomas Preining, I call it the Mansell move in my head, because he flicks it one way and then just kind of dummies them. They think he's going one way and then he switches position. That's what he tried on Jack. It's worked for him loads of times, but it didn't work for him that time. It didn't work for either of them, did it?
Selling the dummy, yes, absolutely. And it was a shame, because if it had pulled it off, it would have been impressive. But it certainly played into the hands of teammate Aitken, and if he thought he was running under the radar, now everybody's watching Aitken, because he launched himself up through the pack. Of course, having back-to-back wins, we've only had 5 back-to-back wins wins on the same weekend in the GT3 era. So now we've had Liam Lawson, Maxi Gertz, Sheldon van der Linde, Thomas Breining, and now Aitken in that rare club since the GT3 era of DTM of getting back-to-back wins on the same weekend. But certainly a 4-time winner now this season. And Guan is there in the championship, and he's no longer under the radar.
Inevitably, at the press conference after the race, he was asked, okay, what are your thoughts now about the championship? You're right in contention. And Aitken smiled, and Jan said, I know this sounds crazy with 4 races to go, but honestly, I think it's too early to talk about the championship. Because he said, we've seen what it's like all season long. You can have a great day, then you can have a terrible day. And it's been like that almost for every single driver this year. And he said, so it could very easily be me that has a terrible day at the Red Bull Ring, and then you're not talking about me in the championship anymore. And he's absolutely right, isn't he?
Yes, and I've said it already today, one DNF and suddenly it could all change. But I still think this championship is going to go down to the last corner of the last lap of the last race. You just get the feeling this is going to go all the way down to the wire. And I think Aitken he's been so consistent this year. He could so easily be there at the end, very much so.
Yeah, and he's been hampered by bad luck in his first couple of seasons of DTM. Always knew what a quality driver he was. Double French Porsche Carrera champion, a front runner and top 3 finisher in the Porsche Super Cup Championship. But so much bad luck in his first couple of seasons of the championship. But also, you know, by his own admission, he said, I've just found something a bit this year as well. And he said it's nothing, you know, specific. It's a little bit here and a little bit there and tiny improvements. He said it's all in the details. He said if I was to try and explain it to you, I'd need 2 or 3 hours to properly tell you about it. It's just all these minute details because it is so close, so competitive out there.
Yeah, it's just, it's such a steep learning curve, really, isn't it? And as you say, it's so competitive, and you're gaining a 1,000th here and a 1,000th there and a 100th here and a 100th there, and that's what makes all the difference. And this is why these free practice sessions are so important as well, as they are discovering. On that subject, just the Lamborghini, well, at the moment, the ride height issue doesn't seem to be too much of an issue for Jordan Pepper. He's third at 138.355, so he's doing pretty well up there. And Tom Callender is up to 8th as well, so he's just jumped up there. So good job from Tom Callender. He's only 0.388 off Jack Aitken's time, as Fabio Scherer has had a brief excursion into the kitty.
Yeah, turn 4 again, that where Jordan Pepper's had a couple of moments.
A bit downhill there as well, isn't it?
So, exactly right. So all the weight goes onto the front axle, and there's no weight on the back of the car, and just straight on. Also, that track, that I'm sure every time they get to that corner now is a different braking point, because it keeps drying out, and it's almost dry on the line there now, but it's still damp and greasy just off it. Maurice Schooling again, he's really impressive in the middle of the lap. The start of the lap was a bit better as well, 24.6. He's still way off the 24.199 through sector 1 that Jack Aitken set, but it's going to improve him. Doesn't improve him, stays 12th. So and now we've got Ricardo Fella off the road. Guess where? Turn 4. So he's gone off as well. So it's getting to that point where it's getting greasy now. The wet tyres are really working, but it's possibly not with 2.5 minutes, not worth putting the dries on either, is it really?
No, they're not going to actually gain anything from it. Look at all the tyre tracks as we look at Ricardo Fella now adding to the tyre tracks. They're going to need to get the rake out after this, aren't they?
Max Powell nearly joined in, didn't he? A bit deep into the corner as well.
He's had a bit of a subdued session, Max has. He's actually found a bit of time, but he's still just under 1.5 seconds off Jack Aitken's time. So I'm looking out the window. The sun's come out. Heaven forbid, on the pit straight, the sun is out. So we're going to have done with it a little bit longer because we've had some dry weather running. And how close to the wall is Jules Gounod getting? And coming past the pits, apparently brushing the wall. Well, he's got a nice tight line into turn 1 anyway, and it sends him to the top of the timing screen. So 138.115.
Well, still really wet there, isn't it?
It is.
It's almost dry at turn 4. At turn 3, which they're approaching now, it's still quite a lot of plumes of spray coming off. A damp line, kind of almost dry on the edge of that line, but still greasy here. But yeah, they go to the next corner, it almost looks dry, doesn't it?
It's I'm looking out the window. The pit straight has got a dry line on it now, and the sun is shining, certainly out of turn 10, which is where I'm looking. But as you say, out on turns 2 and 3. Right, how's he going to cope with turn 4?
Easy.
Doing better than everybody else. Ben Green's taking a slightly wider line, but no, he's made it round as well. But it's still exploring the limits, even with just over a minute remaining.
Yeah, nice, nicely done that. So Jules Gounon quickest, 138.115. We were in the mid 139s at the start of this session, so that shows how much quicker it is. It's getting on for a second and a half a lap quicker. Jules backs off now. Ben Green comes past. Jack Aitken, who's been at or near the top of the times all the way through the session, really. He looks like he's going to end up second. Jordan Pepper third and Thomas Pryning fourth have ended their sessions slightly prematurely. I can see Thomas just has come into the pits in front of me, so they're not going to be back on track for the end of the session. Aitken Gounon has just improved on his most recent lap, or the lap before that rather, up to fifth place. Gilles Magnus, great effort in sixth. Luca Engstler, Ricardo Feller, Lucas Auer and Tom Callender doing a good job in the top 10. Best BMW, Rennie Rast, 13th. And the best Ford, Arjun Miney, 20th. So I think they will be transformed when it's dry. But in the damp and the wet, they look like they might be quite difficult, heavy, big cars to try and get through the turns at this circuit.
I was saying how Max Powell looked like he was struggling. Well, he's just found about 0.8 of a second and jumped up to 17th. So good news for him. At the moment, Fabio Scherer is in 23rd. 23, who have we lost then? Only 23 cars.
Car, have we? Which is
Timo Glock. Yes. So we've not seen Timo. What's happened to him? That's
didn't come out at all, did he?
No, absolutely. We'll find out about that. Hopefully we'll see him in FP2 as the checkered flag comes out.
Didn't even do a sort of recce lap and then come back in, but not complete a lap time. That would have showed on the screen as well. So no Timo Glock story there to find out what happened. So if it's dry for the second session, you get one set of new tyres that you can use, new slick tyres that you can use in the free practice sessions, not one for each session, but one across the course of Friday. Well, they're all going to have that set of new tyres, so you could see some potentially pretty quick lap times if it's dry in free practice too, as they get geared towards, of course, qualifying tomorrow morning. Now, Maurice Scuring, right at the end of the session, threatened this all the way through that second half of the session. He kept putting in absolute best middle sector times. Ironically, he didn't put an absolute best middle sector time in on that lap, but overall, he improved at the start and the end of the lap and went quickest. So Maurice Scuring will end free practice one, top of the times, with an excellent 137.887.
Good job. And it's checkered flag and it's P1. P1, whatever you did it good. Session is done.
Yeah, keep doing that. Whatever it was, that works. Yeah, good effort.
Yeah.
Ricardo Feller actually on the last lap of the race, putting the absolute best middle sector, but then backed off at the end of the lap. Ricardo Feller's ended up that session in 12th place. He was in first, second, third for 2/3 of that session, so it shows how quickly it started to dry up at the end. If you're out there at the end, you were moving up the order. So Maurice Scuring and Jules Gounon and Luca Engstler also improved right at the end of the session. And Max Powell, you said he went up to 17th, then he went up to 4th on the next lap. So Max Powell, waiting for it to get better. It's really dried out very quickly, which is useful information for the teams if we have any rain on Saturday or Sunday. It dried out really quickly, that. So Maurice Scuring, right at the end of the session, the only driver in the 137s with a 137.887, 2/10 quicker than Jules Gounon with a 138.115. Luca Engstler improved on the last lap, 138.189 to go third. And Max Powell improved on the last lap to go fourth with a 138.206. Jack Aitken, Jordan Pepper and Maro Engel up next. Less than 0.4 of a second between the top 7. Half a second covering the top 11 drivers in the session, and 0.8 of a second covering the top 18. And normally spreads out more when it's wet, but it's still really tight and compact, the field around here. So free practice one done. What did they learn? Well, they learned what it's like to drive this car in really wet conditions, and they learned how quickly the track dries out as well. We'll see if they get a dry track for the second free practice session, which starts local time at 3:55, wherever you're watching in the world. Just to give you a benchmark, it's currently 3 minutes past midday here in Austria. So 3:55, just under 4 hours time. We'll have the slightly shorter second free practice session. But yeah, still lots of questions to be answered here. And as you said, we don't really know how they're looking until we get a dry running, which might come in that second session, Brian.
Yes, it could be all change, couldn't it? It's positively balmy out there now. The sun is shining. There's a dry line along the pit straight just as it finishes. It'll be interesting to get, hopefully, a dry session in this afternoon, and it may well be completely different. So drivers returning back to their garages, and a Really, really entertaining session.
Absolutely. So thanks for your company. Join Brian and myself for free practice 2, which is coming up in just under 4 hours' time. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.